Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound. It's Video Interview Sunday, and I'm very, very glad to have someone here whose output is highly eclectic and highly productive. Terence Hannum from Locrian. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So, Terence, I guess that a lot of people are familiar with your band, at least they should be. But maybe you can tell those uninitiated what you are doing in Locrian.
I perform most of the synthesizer work and vocals in Locrian. And on this record, on New Catastrophism, I do a little bit of drum machine and harmonica. So it's been all over the place. Yeah, it doesn't sound like one at the end, but yes, it's treated, but
somewhere in the mix.
Yeah.
So where are we catching you right now?
I'm in Baltimore, and the band, we all used to be based in Chicago, and over time, Steven, the drummer and electronics performer, he still lives in Chicago, but Andre lives in Albany, New York, and I live here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay, so how do you go about band practices then, or songwriting?
The internet is very helpful. So we will often just share a lot of files and ideas and lots of Google Docs, and you know, it's been very helpful to have all that technology at hand. And on the most recent record, we actually, we had years of demos we've been going back and forth over, and we actually kind of went in and didn't really use any of the demos and just decided, like, we're gonna meet together and just write something when we meet.
You just spoke about Google Docs. It's for me hard to imagine how you can share your song ideas via Google Docs. Have you developed some kind of language to describe to the others what you mean?
So, well, normally, like, if you're recording, a synth part or a few ideas or a guitar riff or something, we'll just post it there. And it's been helpful because we will all kind of meet and we will record those practices, just kind of like sharing ideas, and then that'll be something we can come back to. Like, we're actually in the process of that now. We're trying to look to recording our next record, and we are kind of combing through all those demos to, like, find what are the riffs, what are the ideas that we still want to go back to. Have you written something better, and what fits the theme? So
when I did my little research on your band and also on other things related to it, I found two different explanations for the word Locrian. Maybe you can tell us where the name comes from concerning your band and what it means to you.
Sure. The name came from Andre, who's probably our most established, like, musical theorist in the group, and he picked it out from the musical mode, and it's kind of known as this, creepy or dark sounding musical mode. It's also really hard to write in that musical mode. I think we've maybe done it once or twice, but it's really hard. But also it's pretty evocative because it is like a group of people in the Peloponnesian War that are no longer around. So there's a lot of different context that I thought was really interesting.
Okay. So, New Catastrophism. What have the reactions to the new record been so far?
Well, so far, I've been pretty pleased. For me, it's been more what we feel like our older fans who've been around for a longer time. When we used to do maybe more experimental kind of long form work. Uh, it was, something we really wanted to kind of give back to them in a way, kind of this return to a little bit of that mindset. Like I said, we went in and we didn't have, like a lot of demos we're working off of. We just kind of improvised a lot when we got into the studio. So for me, it's been great to kind of hear from other people that we've come back to that. That's been really nice.
Cool. When I looked it up, I found it hard to come up with a real good count. Is this now your studio album number 7, 8, or 9, or what is it?
Man, I saw that and I was looking. I don't know. I feel like it's like 8. I mean, I don't. Do you count the collaborations? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's probably around 8 or so. I mean, our first full length, Drenched Lands. I mean, granted, we had released things that were pretty long before that, but maybe weren't, a full length. I guess I don't know. That's a tough one.
I know, because even Discogs and Bandcamp are at odds about it.
Yeah.
I also saw that, and I knew that you did a lot of collaborative work, but I had no idea how much it was. You have done 4 collaborative full lengths with very different artists, and you did 6 or 7 EPs that way.
Yeah.
Where does that drive to work with other people come from?
I think it's part of maybe where we kind of came from. We definitely came at the time when we started in like 2005 or so. We had like one foot in the noise scene, which had a lot more experimentation and collaboration expected, and the other foot in the metal scene, which I think that's changed now, but at that time was definitely more band based. I think now you have a little bit more collaborations are kind of expected and people are excited by it, whether it's like Thou or The Body or who, people are, it's a little bit more like expected that there's going to be, or Full of Hell and Merzbow or something like that. There's a little bit more of that expectation of a collaboration and people are excited. But I think at that time, it wasn't as common maybe to have a musician that would join in metal, but it wasn't like the thing.
Like Merzbow joining.
Yeah.
Boris, right?
Yeah, exactly. That thing. And I mean, granted, I say that, and I think Boris has consistently had collaborators, since, from a very early time. But Boris comes from an adjacent to Japanese noise culture as well, right? So they're swimming in that, that kind of concept and approach at the same time. But so I think for us, that's where it came from. Was initially we were doing experimental. That's kind of where we came from, where it wasn't uncommon to collaborate with another artist. A little bit harder for us now, being so spread apart. I think for a band, it is important to kind of have your unit to be in one place for this other person to come in. But we've had some very great collaborators. It's been really interesting.
You also, and I picked 2 of them, you had some really interesting collaborations. One with Christoph Heeman. How did that happen? How did you get him?
That was amazing. Obviously we're huge fans of his work. And I really liked his group Ultra, like the power electronics noise group. But that actually happened through a record label. That was through a record label called Handmade Birds. That's not around anymore, but it was the record label's idea. What if you guys did this record with Christoph Heeman? And we were like, Yes. So, and that was interesting because Christoph, so we worked at where Christoph sent us 2 tracks, and we sent Christoph 2 tracks of ideas, and then he took them and just kind of made them into something, and we took his and kind of like turned them into another thing. So it's a really neat process for that one.
And the other collaboration that I picked up because I just simply love that band itself. How did you get across to work with Mammofer?
That actually came about through Profound Lore Records. That was the Chris, the main person at Profound Lore, had been messaging with us and kind of put it out there, and we were fans. Most of us had known Aaron for a long time from running Hydra Head Records when I was a hardcore teenager in Florida ordering 7 inches, and to, obviously with ISIS, or, I mean, I go back with his work back to, there's a band he was in called Union Suit that my friend played in the 1990s that was really, really good.
Hydra had 2.5.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and it's and I also feel, it was an interesting idea, and for us, we thought, well, that sounds compelling, and that was a different process. So that we had never met in person before, and we all were kind of like corralled into Electrical Audio Studio with Greg Norman, and it was, I think they were like fragments of riffs, and everybody had a few ideas, and it just became that record. And we didn't really know what it was going to be like until after it was done, to be honest. I mean, and there were still a few things added. Different musicians joined in. It was very, very interesting. Alex Barnett was on there from. He was in a band called Oak Eater out of Chicago. He's done a lot of work with Faith, so it was just a neat process. Brought together a little bit. It's our relationship with Profound Lore. It's where it started. Was he had this idea, and we thought, well, that's interesting, and we've been friends with him for many years.
So when we're talking about many years, I have to ask this. Is New Catastrophism really the first musical proof of life in 2017? What happened?
Yeah, life, COVID. We all moved. I was living in Chicago, and then I moved here to Baltimore for work, and Andre and Steven are still back there. Then Andre moved, it just became difficult. We toured in 2016, and then after that, it really was like, oh, let's just start demoing, and the demoing process just took a long time, and and then we really were actually like supposed to be in the studio the summer that COVID kind of hit and shut everything down. As things, got clearer, I mean, we were kind of realizing, well, we're not going to be able to get together and kind of work through practicing all these songs. Let's let's just get back in the studio and kind of have fun and enjoy ourselves. Who cares what it is? And so we went in and with Jay Robbins, he has a great studio here in Baltimore. His friend of mine, someone I really admire, and it just wound up working out. But yes, it is, and Steven has another group called Relayer, and that has done really well with Trevor from Pelican. I have another group with my wife, and it's just like music went in all these different places. But it's good to be back and make New Catastrophism. So.
But we do not have to think about those 7 years as being some kind of writer's block.
No, no. I mean, the irony is, we talk like every day. Like the three of us have like these on. If we have to go back and look through like our like just our text messages, it's like impossible because it's so long to find something. Yeah. I mean, we and it'll be sometimes it's just dealing with band business, or sometimes it's like a riff idea. Where's this going? Oh, I thought of this thing. Like, what if we do it this way? So it's definitely not idle time. Um, and a lot of it, becomes how do we get back together and do the things that we want to do? And, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's normal. This is our time right now. A lot of bands have had to take a pretty hefty hiatus as their entire world changed. Their financial situation changed, their location changed. It's different than it was, and so I don't feel it's too crazy. Just because we had a few years before that, to kind of add to it. So
When you speak about your new way of writing or working on things, is that usually a democratic process, or does one of you have to put the foot down?
oh no, we actually have a very honestly a pretty democratic process. It's kind of like if there's one no, it's a no. It's kind of like if someone doesn't like something, but when we're excuse you, yeah, when we're making music, it's you know very like anyone who has an idea gets to kind of go, and we kind of know each other's strengths. So oftentimes someone will put something down, and then we'll be like, what if you did one of those riffs or one of these things, or what if you try that, or Steven, you do this thing, or it's very like you know the palette is just open for everyone. But it might not be your instrument. You might be kind of thinking of someone else, like Andre, put a crazy bass line down here. And we're always like, let's do it. And then we can always cut it. I mean, to us, the studio is just this great place. So, but even live, it'll be, what I miss so much about that is that live songs would just change. It would a new ending would emerge because we were like, let's just let this go a few more bars and see what happens. And we'd suddenly something that kind of faded out becomes a whole other song, essentially live. So I miss that part definitely. Hope that gets changed soon. And but it is a very democratic kind of like, again, you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, like that experimentation, collaboration in our inception. I mean, we still try and maintain it. Even when we're writing like what sound like really, I mean, I think they sound like tight songs for us on an album like Infinite Dissolution or Return to Annihilation or The Crystal World or something. Live, we kind of have a lot more like open-endedness, to how that transitions to the next song or where that goes. So that's kind of part of who we are.
Who you are musically is very diverse, because we're talking with New Catastrophism, we're talking about a record that features basically nearly everything from near medieval string parts to hyper aggressive electric death metal. How can you come up with stuff like that? That is so diverse.
I mean, to me, I think we just kind of look at it like, I mean, in some ways, I guess maybe it's kind of silly, but I grew up in the 90s in Florida, being exposed to death metal, and like nothing sounded the same. Like, I think it's kind of crazy to say, hey, this is all death metal, and you're talking about Death, Obituary, Morbid Angel, or whatever. It's like, yeah, none of these bands are doing the same exact thing. And I think that it's like, to me, it felt like that inspiration felt like exciting, because it was like someone was always going faster, harder, weirder, like darker, more extreme, and I think that kind of impulse is something that we look for. Like, what is something we haven't heard before? What is something we haven't done before? What is something that we, what can we add to that? Whether it's kind of sonically like, all right, well, we're playing kind of like something that has kind of a metal element, but what if we start doing things on acoustic instruments or with an acoustic approach, or use more synthesizers, or or maybe on this quiet passage it isn't, we go towards a black metal scream or something like that, like where we're trying to just have these moments where we're pushing ourselves to not do the same thing twice.
Which I think works perfectly also on the new record. But let's just
Thank you.
clear that for me to have it clear. So when I listen to that last track on New Catastrophisms, Senative to the Final Glacier,
Sure.
is that a regular guitar that I hear at the beginning, or is that again some kind of electronic synth or something?
That's a 12-string acoustic guitar, and there's a bunch of synths and synth work and electronics behind it, but it's a pretty live recorded 12-string part that Andre's playing. And then that song really was for us kind of like I guess like a crossfade between like our prog rock kind of influences, and then our Kosmisch, like our like German rock, like a Popol Vuh outro or something like that.
You mean like the harder or the more difficult krautrock stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is, I mean, those are two massive influences for us, and we were like kind of in this headspace of, I don't know, to me that's an exciting time of music, of the early prog music and that German rock scene of that time was very experimental and encouraging, and I'm a kind of a deep collector of a lot of that stuff because of the synth work and everything, but and it's just full of so many ideas, whether it's there's this guy Reichmann, he was an early member of Neu, and he did a solo record on Sky that is like one of my favorites, to Michael Rotter, people like that I'm like, they just had, it was like they're in the studio and do whatever the heck they wanted to do with all these cool electronics. So that was kind of the second half of that track, where we have all the kind of arpeggiated synth work, and kind of Steven took the drum beat and glitched it out. So you have that kind of like staticky, glitchy beat that's to it. Yeah, no, it's, I really am happy with that song. But yeah, it's an acoustic guitar. Yeah.
When I look at the track titles for the new record, I already mentioned Cenotaph. A lot of the titles are really, really dark, especially also the ones on the Ghost Frontiers EP, which is like an add-on.
Yeah.
What is your view on the current state of global affairs, on mankind, on our future?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, we definitely are coming from a place of, I guess, like a very pessimistic environmentalism of some sort. But I think a lot of it is, for me, as like writing lyrics for Locrian, for me, a lot of it is influenced by science fiction, and for, science fiction gives us this way to kind of think of the future and and maybe talk about the present a little bit. But to me, it's a lot about a very dark view of where we're going, I guess, kind of mainly environmentally, I think, and especially in our country, where with people who deny the existence of climate change, and you're like, look around you, like, and more that like there's and it's all kind of financially motivated denial or whatever, and that becomes and then to me, I think we're kind of past a lot of points of turning that ship around, and it's very concerning to me. I have kids, and what am I like? What's going to happen for them? Like, what's their summer going to look like in 10 years?
Are they able to go outside?
Yeah, exactly. And I think and to me, it's in a way maybe science fiction is like a refuge because it's like we have writers like J.G. Ballard or Stanislaw Lem or Samuel Delany who kind of look ahead in a way, or Ursula Le Guin or whoever. They're kind of like thinking about some of these questions and offering some kind of maybe not the most hopeful vision, but it's like they can kind of help you process it in some way. Like when you start to realize that, yeah, like you're looking at this, the first track on the record is called Morticnia, and that Morticnia is in a fossil record, the last steps of the dying creature. When they find the final steps before their death, they become fossilized. Mm-hmm. And I just thought I love the word, but also I loved how evocative that was. Like, what is our last steps going to look like as a species? We'll just be like a bunch of McDonald's wrappers and like, like.
Or are we already making those last steps?
Exactly. And that's where it kind of comes from. Like a cenotaph is an empty tomb. There's nothing there. Like the glacier evaporated. You can't bury the glacier. It's done.
You're not burying anything.
Yeah. There's nothing there. Like, and that kind of inspired that vision in a way.
So, are you happy that nowadays there are more environmentally aware bands around, like Botanists, Drifted into Black, yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that, like, I guess. Yes, I mean, I think obviously, and I know that maybe some bands that might not be their central themes too, but I think it's definitely a question that, well, you're seeing it. I guess there's the popular conversation about private jets and famous musicians, but there's also like, but I think there's also like even small bands like like with its packaging for their records or shipping or just like small things that I think like you're concerned about the waste that goes into a lot of production. I feel that there are definitely artists who are approaching it or putting it into their work. And I feel it's nice to know that other people are thinking about it,
Would you then agree that in some ways the most environmentally sane way of releasing a record is digital only?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But I think at the same time, it's like, like I said, like, it's kind of a pessimism in a way. It's like, I don't really think that one band adjusting it's like, what's that gonna do? Yeah. And I think when you compare it to, multi-billion-dollar corporations and the petrochemical industry or just the chemical industry. I mean, like, if you look at like phosphate mining or whatever, it's like you're like, what do we? Well, yeah, fracking. I mean, I live in the Northeast United States. Fracking's huge here, and it's like, it's kind of gone away somewhat from public consciousness, but in my state, in neighboring Pennsylvania in America, it's definitely like it was kind of a big item, and I'm sure it still is in some communities. But and the offset of that, like pollution and what happens to your drinking water, I mean, it's crazy. But I think, it's like. And I mean, there's musicians who dealt with this, like Neil Young dealt with that. Like he would make recyclable materials for his record sleeves in the 70s. Like he was really, so I think that there's definitely like a tradition of maybe musicians, sometimes we kind of think about these things a little bit more than other people, especially if you're in touch with how a record gets made, you're just kind of like shocked at, waste or whatever. But, yeah.
I mean, you and me still remember those 90s when hardcore bands used to just simply take apart old record covers, bend them inside out, put something on the outside, and then reuse that. I mean, like that was something different. So your last record came out in 2015. Now it took like 7 years to get a new full length get going. What are and then you title that new record New Catastrophism. So question must be, what were or are the biggest catastrophes since infinite dissolution for you?
When we wrote,
Apart from an orangutan moving into the White House for 4 years.
yeah. Well, it wasn't. I think for us, it was. Every record is kind of precipitated by some kind of environmental catastrophe that we kind of are discussing privately. And on this one, there were, honestly, like we're kind of dealing with a serious flooding situation in the United States. And it was kind of watching these floods happen in places that you wouldn't expect them. And the seeing communities.
We had that in Germany last year.
Exactly, in Germany last year. And that was around the same time. Was it this summer last year around there? Yeah,
it was July.
And and it was here and in Europe, and we saw that in Germany, and just kind of like thinking about rewriting entire cities with a river or something. It just like blew our minds, but the kind of like the obliviousness or how the story can fade away. But if you experience that, if that's something that happens in your community, and you can't, that's like where you grew up and that was the home you owned or the business that you had, it's like how it devastates. And to me, I don't know, I think that was, so there was a series of floods last year that kind of, we were writing the record. That was some of the imagery that we would we have like visual mood boards we'll kind of talk about. And it's like to think about that, like, so even on, the glare is everywhere and nowhere our shadow. That was kind of like inspired by that. Like, what if there's no more, this water takes over everything. This is undrinkable water that takes over everything. And kind of like, we're going to be, I don't know. It just was like, for me, there's like the real actual science or environmental issue. And then I always throw it through a prism of just like science fiction. Like, what does it look like in 100 years? Or what is it, who survives and what is their life like at the end of this extremity? And how do you, what is that world of contamination and environmental collapse? How do we report back from that viewpoint?
And how do people look back on us, right?
Yeah, and I think in some ways, for sure, like, how do they look back on the people that kind of like really didn't do much, like in some ways, right? Like really, like all the warning signs were there and the lights blinking red, and you're just like, continue, like it's kind of crazy.
Do you agree with Santayana, who once said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it?
In some ways, I think we're in what I would say is, I think we're at this point where we're pushing into a future that is unprecedented for humanity, right? Yep. So we don't have like a past to repeat if we're moving towards what only, you can kind of gauge upon, like an extinction level event or something, right? Like we're looking at something that's like, well, a massive food shortages, entire landscapes shifted, entire ways of life changing. I think it is in the past, it's like, that's like an ancestral past, right? Like something that like ice age kind of like stuff, right? So to me, I agree, yes, but I think we're also in the period where the kind of way of thinking of like, the past of 10, 50, 100 years ago to repeat like some kind of atrocity, it's like we're at the environmentally, I feel that we're like at this point of millennia or eon of just like so far ahead that where we're going, none of us are capable of comprehending what it's going to be like, which I think gets us to this kind of like anomie or something, right? Like where you're like looking at the train coming at you and you don't know how to move, right? Because it's such it's so impossible to comprehend it.
Yeah, and also at the same time, you can comprehend it, but how can you prevent it? It's like,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. We're moving into an era where our ancestors have never been in.
Yeah. There's I'm not that crazy about this artist, Damien Hirst, but he has a sculpture of, I'm sure you've probably seen, it's a giant shark in formaldehyde. And the title of it is The Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. And I've always, even though I'm not crazy about his art, that title really kind of like cuts through in a way, right? That we can't even comprehend what extinction or what that kind of mass death is in the future. Like it's beyond, and we have to live. We have to, like, have lives. We can't like sit here and you'll do nothing. Like you'll never make music. You'll never,
Yeah.
But I think that sculpture, kind of that title, always stands with me. It's like you can't comprehend what it's going to be like.
I want to go back to something that you hinted at a few moments ago. You spoke about using a visual mood board for the band.
Mm-hmm.
That means that your music also, in a way, is, I don't want to say determined, but influenced by visualizations?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So I went to school for art, and we are all kind of consumers of a lot of visual art, and we'll tend to kind of like post different artists, kind of share different works that inspire us, and we're always kind of on this quest, whether it's David Altmedge, who did the cover for Infinite Dissolution, or Richard Mizrak, who's an amazing photographer, who did the cover for Return to Annihilation, which was all about a place in America and Louisiana we call Cancer Alley, and it's called Cancer Alley. That's the petrochemical industry that's kind of surrounding typically poor communities in that area, who can't get up and move when a giant chemical plant releases morning fogs of chemical distillate into the air. And that's where the cover comes from. But so this one, it is very like, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a chicken or the egg question, but we'll start kind of posting these like images, and I'll start picking out books, and posting books, and we'll start talking about it, and Steven will suggest a book, and normally Andre or Steven suggests kind of like a nonfiction work. And then I start being like, well, wouldn't it be weird? Like if, and I'll start suggesting some science fiction writers, who, were, doing something interesting, like Brian Aldiss, or especially like, I mean, I'm very inspired by like the British New Wave kind of from the 60s, who really challenged our ideas of science fiction. And I'll be like, what if, we talk about that work, the nonfiction book written by a scientist and a journalist, but what if that's through this lens of this? And then and then all the visual elements come together. And that's, so it's like a mood board with literature, I guess.
Which sounds highly intellectual and makes sense in the way that one listens to your band. But interestingly, it never sounds as if the music has been over intellectualized. I think that is a huge accomplishment on your side.
Oh, thank you.
And another accomplishment is also the EP that you are adding, Ghost Frontiers.
Yeah.
Why are you releasing it alongside the new record and not as a standout EP?
We kind of went into New Catastrophism thinking kind of in an old, like, what would we do for our old fans, who've been around, who've been following us for a long time? And that was something that we would have done. We would have, made like a crazy drone that would accompany, like on a 3-inch CD or on a cassette or something. So we had this idea of like, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but in the downtime of recording a record, we would lay down like these drones and shape them into a more longer format piece. And and just that we would take our time with it and just have it be something that maybe doesn't change as much. We're kind of, all of us come from different backgrounds, but we were really interested in this musician Thomas Kohner, and he has this great series that we were all sharing and inspired by, it was just kind of an idea that went alongside that. And also maybe something that felt more immersive, because New Catastrophism, even though I think, some of the pieces, there's a structure in there, right? Like, so Cenotaph goes from acoustic, proggy kind of beginning into like a krautrock ending, right? So we have these movements, and we wanted to make something that had like no movement, just was like very static and very like ambient, and that was just something that we wanted to put out with it. And we thought it was written at the same time, kind of from a similar perspective of
a similar mood board.
Yeah, similar. It was just like, it was kind of coming from that place of like, what is this kind of flooded future of humanity or whatever. And for us, some of the titles hopefully get people to that, and that you can just put it on and kind of immerse yourself into this dark like landscape. Like, to me, like, I hear sounds and I see visions, I see things, and that's always the most successful music kind of evokes for me, like some kind of cinematic quality or something. And that's what I was hoping this would do.
It does. It definitely does.
Thank you.
So, I have one last question before we get to our infamous quickfire round.
All right.
Imagine you can curate a 1-day 5-band festival with Locrian playing at one of those 5 spots. Which other bands would you like to have for that festival, in which kind of order?
Oh man.
I
know. Okay. Any band from any moment in history?
Well, let's say it should be a festival.
An active.
Yeah, that's an active one.
Okay, an active band. Okay, all right.
Not Genesis with Gabriel on the mic and Collins.
Oh, okay.
Being where he should be in the back.
I know. It's very sad. Andre saw Phil Collins actually on the last tour with his son playing drums. It was very good, but it's also very sad because he cannot play drums. I can't even imagine that. All right, so let me, okay, on the spot. Okay, all right. I did think about it. Okay, so it would have to be, all right, this is just me. This isn't the band. This is just me. Of course. All right, so Blood Incantation, but they have to play Time Wave Zero stuff. So that's
okay.
Because I wish that I saw them at Maryland Death Fest, and I was like, that would be so badass to just come out with a stage full of synths and
especially
do it
at Maryland Death Fest, right? Yeah.
And, I mean, they were brilliant. They're probably the highlight of my day at Death Fest. It's one of the benefits I get living here in Baltimore. I get to go to Death Fest every year. Next year they'll be off, but they'll be back the following year. But Blood Incantation and Time Wave Zero. I would love to have Chaos Echoes. I think that would be amazing. I would say Low. That would be one I would love to have on there, performing this new stuff that I think is just their best work. Awesome. I love their early stuff, but I love this new stuff. We're a slot, so I got one more.
You got one more.
And I would say Aaron Dillaway collaborating with whoever he wants to collaborate with.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
And where in that list would Locrian play? First, second, third, fourth, fifth?
We're gonna play fair. Play in the middle. That's the safest answer. It's like I love open. I actually don't mind opening, and I don't mind closing either way. But I think in the middle, so I can still have the stamina and the mental bandwidth to enjoy the rest of the evening rather, than the pressure to perform before. So yes, I would in the middle be fine. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to our infamous quickfire round. You get
Sure.
two alternatives, have to choose one of them, and maybe give a short explanation. Let's start off with something easy. You come from Chicago, so I have to ask, White Sox or the Cubs?
White Sox. Come on. Cubs is a finesse team. Are you a baseball fan? I'm a big Orioles fan. I grew up in this region.
The Orioles will not make it this year as you sold Mancini. So forget about that.
No. They are so close to clinching a wild card spot. I'm just so excited. 2014 was amazing. I grew up with many decades of the Orioles being awful, and it's been a long time of them being awful recently. So it's nice to see a really good team, and every game's exciting. So I'm just happy. But I agree. And Mancini's last game was amazing. Those last home run in the field, home run, just crazy. But yes, White Sox, I definitely have a lot more. I like the White Sox very much. I actually will watch the White Sox still.
House of Low Culture versus Canate.
Canate, yeah, absolutely. Capture and Release, in my opinion, is one of the best metal albums in my top 10. I actually think that still to this day, it's kind of a hard record to touch. Not many people have come close on that one.
Jawbox versus Burning Airlines.
Jawbox. I used to grow up listening to Jawbox on my Walkman, going to school, listening to Novelty on cassette. And so meeting Jay and having this working relationship with him when we have recorded, it has been awesome. And he's just such a great person.
Something easy. Philly cheesesteak versus a Chicago deep dish pizza.
Philly cheese. Deep dish is like for tourists, man. I don't know. I don't even know if deep dish is like literally. I live there, and I think I only bought it when like my parents came to visit. I don't know. It's like it's just like we rarely, and like I don't know many. There are Chicagoans who love deep dish, but it's a rarity, and it's like it's fine. You find places you like, but it's not my favorite. But I like a Philly cheesesteak. I'm close to Philadelphia. I like Philly cheesesteak.
Boris versus Mertzbau.
Man.
Don't worry. I have even worse questions than that.
Oh man. Gonna say Mertzbau because it's so important to me. When Venerology came out, that was like, I think maybe like the second or third or maybe fourth noise release I'd ever heard. And it changed my trajectory. I'm out and I love both bands. So
Sun versus Godsnake.
Godsnake, sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Godsnake's a good name though. Someone should use that. But no, Sun. I mean, when they started that project, to me, Godsnake's pretty orthodox. Not really doesn't really do much for me. But Sun, I thought was very interesting. I love that they began as an Earth cover band because that's my favorite Earth. Is when I thought I was ordering the Earth that had Kurt Cobain on it. But I got Earth 2 instead because at the time when it came out, I was ordering from my catalog, and I was like 13 or whatever, and I got Earth 2, and I was like, "What is this?" And then on the back, he has like a Morbid Angel shirt on, and I was like, "Well, all right." And for me, again like getting Mertzbau, Earth 2, and for me when Sun started. I think it rank a lot of the right people, because there were no drums. And to me, I was like, this is like Earth 2. This is awesome. Like, what a great idea.
And now you're on a podcast where both have already been interviewed.
Yeah.
Last two. Popol Vuh or Amandule 2?
Popol Vuh. I listen to Popol Vuh, and Popol Vuh just goes through so many, from the early synth to the like world music, his like kind of quasi Christian like sacred music phase. I think, and we've covered Popol Vuh. We covered one of their songs off of. I'm not going to speak the German because I speak German awfully. But at the last days, or last of our days, last of our nights, where it was like the rock bands, kind of the full-on like psych rock bands, and it's and we had my wife sang on that 7-inch. It was a really fun cover, and Popol Vuh to me, it's like I literally just got the soundtrack to Cobra Verde. This and it's again full of so many ideas. It's that to me, I guess is it. It's like Popol Vuh. It's just like, I mean, Amandul too. It's very important. I love that movement. But I love the spectrum of Popol Vuh where you have like In the Garden of the Pharaohs to Agape, or it's just like they're like a rock band. They're like just synths droning. It's like what do they do? You know, and then the soundtracks, like, you know, they're just so good. Popol Vuh all the way.
Last question: Isaac Asimov or Philip K. Dick?
Philip K. Dick. I mean, we probably could predict that one. So, I don't really like that much Philip K. Dick, but I was actually very moved by A Scanner Darkly. That book is probably to me his most, and I've read some other people have said too, like his most personal. Is it's about drug use and what he saw in the kind of like war on drugs in America, in like a very, again, like looking to the future where certain technologies have changed, and you know, I feel that it's very personal. It's not like Man the High Castle or something like that. Or even like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or whatever. I feel that Scanner Darkly just gets us to this interesting questions, and I felt it was very tragic because he's like lamenting his friends, like he's lamenting these people who were died or incarcerated. And I think that it's like, I think that kind of level of, especially in science fiction or speculative fiction, that kind of introspection is a little bit rare sometimes.
Definitely. So, Terence, I hope that everybody will listen to the new record, New Catastrophism. It's out, I think, August 13th. It's amazing, in my opinion. I love the way that you have incorporated so many different things on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for being on the show.
Sure.
And, well, have a great day.
You too.